I enjoy exploring Georgia. From my home in Augusta, within a few hours I can reach the coastal plain with its tea-colored rivers and pine forests to the south, or the rolling hills, mountains, and hardwood forests of the Piedmont to the north. And in between are towns and people full of stories. Our producer, Mark Alberton, and I would like to bring you along with us on these trips. We'll show you what we're seeing and who we're meeting. This series will give you a roadmap to places you'd otherwise never have seen. It will give you a glimpse of Georgia as we travel where the road takes us. There are places in Georgia off the main roads and under the shade of old trees where you can imagine the past. We found such a place just outside Keysville, Georgia. It's called Boggs Rural Life Center. On a hot summer day, Mark and I drove the 40-minute trek from Augusta, passing through dense pine forests and along narrow country roads. Boggs Academy, as it was called in the past, was once a thriving, safe haven for education. It was a place where African American youth could learn and grow during a time of racial unrest and Jim Crow policies. Today, many decades after the last bell chimed, the grounds sit vacant. Boggs no longer is a learning institution. But I wanted to learn more. What happened to Boggs? And is there hope for this place that has done so much for Black youth in the past to become a part of the community again? We set out to learn more and began our interviews under a dense patch of pecan trees on the Boggs campus.
As we were growing up, Boggs was just like the center of our community that provided all the little extra things that, that we needed in the community. And, Boggs provided, it was an educational institution. It prepared them for college. At least 98% of them went on to college, and they, graduated. And some of them became doctors and lawyers. And that's the most positive things as far as Black people in this community. It was an educational institution, and it provided that exceptional educational opportunity for us that we wouldn't have had if we weren't living in this community. Now, we had students that came from all over the country, and I think it was like 9 other countries when I was here.
I think at one point in time, over 90% of the students who came to Boggs, who graduated from Boggs, went off to college. We had a very high rate of folks going to college from Boggs. I tell you what happens too, whenever you're in a place like this, your whole world is here. Your whole world is here. And you go to Waynesboro from time to time, but everything would center around being on this campus and being engaged with what the students were doing, et cetera, what was going on, et cetera. It was your whole world.
I like to say the new name, Boggs Rural Life Center, is perhaps more indicative of what Boggs Academy actually was. Because during the time I was here, there were no such things as janitors, because the students took care of mostly everything. It was self-sufficient to an enormous degree. Of course, there was adult supervision. There were people who worked in the dining hall. There were people who, we cleaned the rooms, the hallways of the school. That we did the lawn. We did the farm. There were kids who milked the cows. There were kids who fed the hogs and the goats. And I don't ever remember there being chickens while I was here, but that was virtually everything was student run to a great degree.
there were very few opportunities for blacks, even not only in, they would say, the state of Georgia, but even the country. Once I graduated from Savannah State College in 1968, there weren't any opportunities, very limited opportunities for dietitians. So even though I had the degree in dietetics and institutional management, with a minor in chemistry, you still could not find an internship for black people. Even as I went then to South Carolina, I taught there for a year before I came back here and worked as a dietitian. I think back to that opportunity that they provided for me to work here, to hone my skills in actually planning menus and supervising and cooking and educating the students and training the students that work with me in the dining hall, just out of college.
Sometimes I'd say this too. Not every student who came to Boggs was an A student or was an exemplary student. But I tell you, transformation took place. I tell you a funny thing. When we first opened during the first part of the year, parents would come down. And this one parent went over to the girls' dorm, and she came back and said, "What have you done to my daughter?" Well, I'm gonna tell you something. When you hear something like that, you say, "Oh my God." Her room was so neat and everything was in place, and she'd make the kids take off their shoes to come into her room. She said when she was at home, she was a mess. She did this, and oh yeah. She could not believe that what she saw was her daughter. And so yeah, it was interesting and fun.
Boggs Academy was transformational and challenged the students to be their best. The Presbyterian faith was high on their program and was integrated into daily life.
We learned to pray a lot because it was generally a part of what we would do. Even if it was just repeating the Lord's Prayer or saying the 23rd Psalm or something like that. Even when we went to church every Sunday. And before we left, we stood on the steps of the dormitory and we sang and did a prayer. And so that was really integral in there. And speaking of singing, because we sang the blessing for every meal, that made this a great singing place.
With our interviews completed, fill and drone footage in the can, we drove away feeling satisfied about our trip to Boggs. We saw an empty campus, but the future looks very bright for the Boggs Rural Life Center.
Yeah, everyone that inside of my experiences being there on campus and being in shared stewardship, everyone's like, wow. And not wow as in like, wow, that's the past. It's like, wow, the potential. And so, yeah, I hope that the storytelling that's happening around Boggs, the dedicated people who have committed decades of their life. I haven't committed decades of my life quite yet, but that's what I intend to do. Because, yeah, Boggs Academy, Boggs Rural Life Center, as a Black-led, Black-stewarded institution that was offered by Black landowners, can not just continue to be beneficial to the Black community, but can be beneficial to the greater CSR, just Georgia, the nation, the world, like where can we go and see not only how we lived, but have maps and tools and guidance on how we can be living in more harmony and reciprocity with nature.
Dear OBA, the blue and gold, our alma mater, loved by all, we'll always keep thee in our hearts, and always hate from thee to part. Dear OBA, the blue and gold, our alma mater, loved by all. Our very souls for thee rejoice. Our very souls for thee